The black box started playing children's laughter 3 minutes after it had been completely disconnected from power. Aviation investigator Sarah Harmon froze, her 27 years of flight recorder analysis experience suddenly worthless as the eerie sound filled the sterile laboratory. The giggling, clear as day, emanated from a device that should have been completely dead, salvaged from the wreckage of Flight 2317, where all 187 souls aboard had perished, including 43 children. Before we go deeper into this disturbing case, make sure to subscribe now. This channel exposes aviation mysteries and forbidden reports the industry tries to hide. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next investigation, where we reveal the truth behind the crashes they don't want you to know about. Sarah Harmon wasn't easily rattled. She'd analyzed black boxes from some of the most catastrophic air disasters in recent history, crashes where pilots' final screams still haunted her dreams. But nothing in her extensive career had prepared her for what happened that night at the National Transportation Safety Board's secured laboratory in Arlington, Virginia. Flight 2317 had been a routine domestic flight from Boston to Charlotte. The Airbus A320 took off at 6:37 in the morning on October 12, 2022, with clear skies and optimal flying conditions. Captain Michael Reeves, 53, had logged over 17,000 flight hours. His co-pilot, First Officer Jessica Lang, 37, had 7,000 hours. Both had perfect safety records. 46 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft vanished from radar screens. No distress call, no indication of mechanical failure. The final voice communication had been a routine acknowledgement of an altitude adjustment. Then, silence. The wreckage was discovered 8 hours later, scattered across a remote area of the Adirondack Mountains. The impact had been catastrophic. First responders described the scene as complete devastation. Initial reports suggested controlled flight into terrain. The aircraft had seemingly flown directly into the mountainside at cruising speed with no attempt at evasive maneuvers. The strangest thing, Sarah would later tell her colleague, was how the wreckage was arranged, almost deliberately, like someone had placed the pieces after the crash. The flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, collectively known as the black boxes, were recovered 3 days after the crash. Both were in remarkably good condition considering the violence of the impact. This, in itself, wasn't particularly unusual. Black boxes are designed to withstand extreme conditions, impacts of 3,400 G-forces, temperatures of 1,100 degrees Celsius, and crushing pressures equivalent to 20,000 feet underwater. What was unusual was the behavior of the devices once they arrived at the laboratory. Sarah and her team followed standard protocols upon receiving the recorders. They were photographed, serialized, and placed in secure storage until the formal investigation began. Black boxes contain separate memory modules powered by their own batteries. These batteries aren't meant to power the entire unit, just to provide emergency power to the recording functions in case of electrical system failure. "We disconnected everything," Sarah would insist in her officially redacted report. The unit was completely isolated from any power source. Yet that night, as Sarah prepared to begin the data extraction process, the cockpit voice recorder activated on its own. The laboratory's ambient recording system captured what happened next. The timestamp reads 22:17:43. Sarah can be heard humming quietly as she prepares her equipment. Then, silence. A soft click follows, identified later as the sound of the CVR's internal mechanisms engaging. 3 seconds after that, laughter fills the room. Children's laughter. The recording captures Sarah's sharp intake of breath, followed by, "What the hell?" The laughter continues for 13 seconds before abruptly cutting off. Sarah's breathing is audible, quick, shallow pants of someone experiencing acute distress. "This isn't possible," she whispers. But the impossibilities were just beginning. When Sarah finally managed to extract the audio data from the recorder, what she found defied explanation. The standard 2-hour loop contained normal cockpit communications for the first 45 minutes of flight. Then, at 07:22:18, 11 seconds before radar contact was lost, something changed. The cockpit voice recorder captured Captain Reeves mid-sentence, requesting permission to ascend to 37,000. Then, children laughing. The same laughter Sarah had heard in the lab. It lasted for 8 seconds on the recording. When it stopped, First Officer Lang could be heard saying, "Did you hear that?" Captain Reeves, "Hear what?" Lang, "That, laughing. Children laughing." Reeves, "Jessica, there's no." More laughter, louder this time. Both pilots fall silent. Reeves, voice tight with tension, "Where is that coming from?" Lang, "Oh my God, look." 3 seconds of silence. Reeves, "That's not possible." Lang, "Michael, what do we do?" Then a new sound enters the recording, a soft, rhythmic thumping, like small hands drumming against the cockpit door. Reeves, "This isn't happening." Lang, voice rising, "They're getting louder. Michael, they're—" The laughter intensifies. The thumping becomes more insistent. Reeves can be heard unbuckling his harness. Lang, "Don't open it." Michael, "Don't." The sound of the cockpit door opening, a rush of air. And then the most disturbing element of all, total silence. No alarms, no screams, no impact sounds. Just absolute silence for 1 minute and 23 seconds until the recording ends. But the flight continued for another 6 minutes after the recorder went silent. Sarah stared at her equipment in disbelief. She ran the analysis again and again. The results were consistent. The aircraft had continued its flight path for 6 additional minutes after the cockpit voice recorder stopped functioning. "That's not possible," she told her supervisor, Thomas Nielsen, the following morning. "The CVR has an independent power source. It's designed to record until impact. Even if every system on that plane failed, the recorder should have captured the final moments." Nielsen, a 30-year veteran of aviation disaster investigations, reviewed the data himself. His face grew increasingly pale as he studied the readouts. "Run the flight data recorder," he said quietly. "Let's see what the instruments recorded." The FDR told an even more confounding story. Like the voice recorder, it functioned normally until 07:22:18. Then, in perfect synchronicity with the children's laughter on the CVR, the flight data recorder began registering impossible readings. The altimeter showed the aircraft at 43,000 feet, well above its certified ceiling. The airspeed indicator fluctuated between 0 and 700 knots within milliseconds. The gyroscope registered the plane as flying inverted, then sideways, then in configurations that would have torn any aircraft apart. Most disturbing of all, the cabin pressure sensor recorded 43 distinct pressure drops in rapid succession, exactly matching the number of children on board. "This is a malfunction," Nielsen said firmly, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. "Both recorders were damaged in the crash. These readings are meaningless." But Sarah knew better. The physical examination of the recorders had shown them to be in exceptional condition. The memory modules were intact. The data was uncorrupted. Whatever had been recorded was real, at least as far as the instruments were concerned. "I want to go to the crash site," Sarah said. Nielsen shook his head. "The field investigation is already complete. We have all the wreckage that's going to be recovered." "Not all of it," Sarah insisted. "We're missing something." 3 days later, Sarah Harmon stood at the impact site in the Adirondacks. Despite official objections, she had taken personal leave to visit the area. The mountains loomed around her, indifferent to the tragedy they had witnessed. Most of the wreckage had been removed, but smaller debris still littered the forest floor, along with signs of the recovery operation. Tagged markers, trampled vegetation, the lingering scent of jet fuel. Sarah wasn't entirely sure what she was looking for. Something to make sense of the impossible data. Something to explain the children's laughter that still echoed in her mind. She walked the debris field systematically, moving outward from the point of impact. 3 hours into her unauthorized investigation, she found it. A section of the forward cabin wall, partially concealed beneath fallen leaves. It shouldn't have been remarkable. Just another fragment of the shattered aircraft. But this piece was different. While most of the wreckage showed signs of the violent impact and subsequent fire, this section appeared almost pristine, and on its surface, clearly visible against the white interior paint, were 43 small handprints. Child-sized handprints, arranged in a perfect circle. Sarah's heart pounded as she knelt beside the debris. The handprints weren't made with paint or blood. They seemed to be burned into the material itself, like scorch marks. She reached out, hesitated, then placed her palm against one of the smaller prints. The metal was ice cold. She snatched her hand back, gasping. In the mountain air, her breath formed a cloud, directly above the handprint she'd touched. As she watched, frost began to form around the tiny outline, spreading outward in delicate crystals despite the mild October day. Sarah fumbled for her phone, snapping photo after photo of the impossible evidence. As she did, a sound reached her ears. Faint at first, then growing steadily louder. Children laughing. She spun around, searching for the source. But she was alone in the forest. The laughter seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, surrounding her, pressing in on her. And beneath it, a rhythmic thumping. Like small hands drumming against a door, Sarah ran. She left the fragment where it lay and didn't stop until she reached her rental car, her breath coming in ragged gasps. As she slumped against the steering wheel, trying to calm her racing heart, her phone chimed with an incoming text. It was from an unknown number. The message contained just 4 words. "Don't tell them, please." Back in Arlington, Sarah faced a decision. Should she report what she'd found? Include the handprints in her official analysis? She knew how it would sound. Stress-induced hallucination. Paranoid delusion. The psychological toll of investigating too many crashes. Her career would be over. Worse, the truth about Flight 2317 would remain buried. In the end, she chose a middle path. She would analyze the black box data according to protocol, but keep her discovery at the crash site private, at least until she understood what it meant. The flight data analysis continued to yield contradictions. The aircraft's final 6 minutes of flight couldn't be explained by any known aerodynamic principles. According to the salvageable data, Flight 2317 had somehow continued flying after losing all hydraulic systems, all electrical power, and most of its control surfaces. And the children's laughter remained. Every time Sarah played back the cockpit voice recording, the laughter was there. But something strange was happening. It was changing. Each playback revealed subtle differences. The laughter shifted, evolved, as if the children were responding to being heard. On the 4th day of analysis, Sarah noticed something she'd missed before. Behind the laughter, almost too faint to detect, was a voice, a child's voice, whispering, "We're still flying." Sarah isolated the audio, enhanced it, filtered out background noise. The voice became clearer. "We're still flying. We'll always be flying. Don't let them ground us." A chill ran down her spine as another voice emerged from the recording. "They said we were too heavy, too many of us, but we can fly forever now." Sarah worked through the night, extracting every whisper, every hidden word from the recording. By morning, she had reconstructed a chilling narrative from dozens of children's voices. Flight 2317 had been overbooked.
To accommodate standby passengers, the airline had quietly exceeded the aircraft's maximum occupancy. Weight calculations had been falsified, safety procedures compromised. The 43 children on board, a school choir returning from a competition, had been counted as 30 in the manifest, their weights deliberately underestimated. The aircraft had been dangerously overloaded from the moment it left the gate. But this wasn't just corporate negligence, it was criminal, and the black box data suggested something even more disturbing. Someone had attempted to erase the evidence.
The cockpit voice recorder had been tampered with. Sections had been deliberately corrupted. Specifically, conversations between the pilots and air traffic control about the weight discrepancies. But the tampering had triggered something unexpected, something impossible. Somehow, the voices of the children had emerged from the damaged data, as if they refused to be silenced. Sarah's phone chimed again. Another message from the unknown number. "The handprints are our promise. We won't let them do it again." She stared at the message for a long time. Then she made her decision. The next morning, Sarah Harmon presented her preliminary findings to the investigation committee. She detailed the technical failures, the flight path anomalies, and the unexplained final 6 minutes of flight. She presented evidence of data tampering and suggested an immediate review of the airline's weight and balance procedures. She said nothing about handprints or ghostly laughter or text messages from unknown sources. After the meeting, Thomas Nielsen pulled her aside. "You held something back," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Sarah met his gaze steadily. "You wouldn't have believed me. Try me." So she did. She showed him the photos from the crash site, played the enhanced audio, showed him the text messages. To her surprise, Nielsen didn't dismiss her claims. He listened intently, his expression growing more troubled with each revelation. 26 years ago, he said finally, I investigated the crash of Southern Airways Flight 462. 78 passengers, 12 crew members. No survivors. He paused. There were 21 children on board, a youth soccer team. Sarah waited, sensing there was more to the story. The official cause was determined to be pilot error, but I found evidence suggesting weight distribution issues. The cargo hold had been improperly loaded, shifting the aircraft's center of gravity. Nielsen's voice grew quieter. I included it in my report. The airline buried it. 3 executives and 2 board members faced criminal charges for falsifying safety documents. All were acquitted. He fell silent for a moment, then added, 2 months after the trial, I found 21 small handprints on my bedroom wall, burned into the wallpaper like scorch marks, ice cold to the touch. Sarah's breath caught. What did you do? Nothing. I was too afraid. I repainted the wall and tried to forget. His eyes met hers, haunted by decades-old guilt. 3 months later, another plane went down. Same airline, similar circumstances. 19 children died in that crash. The implication was clear. His silence had cost lives. The children of Flight 2317 aren't resting, Sarah said softly. They're trying to tell us something. Trying to prevent another disaster. Nielsen nodded slowly. So, what do? We listen to them. That night, Sarah and Nielsen returned to the laboratory. The black boxes from Flight 2317 remained in secure storage, untouched since Sarah's last analysis session. They placed the cockpit voice recorder on the examination table and connected a single power source. Enough to access the memory, but not to activate the full system. Ready? Sarah asked. Nielsen nodded, his face pale but determined. Sarah pressed the power button. Nothing happened. She checked the connections and tried again. Still nothing. Maybe it's, Nielsen began. The recorder activated on its own. The familiar click of internal mechanisms engaging. Then, silence. "Hello?" Sarah said tentatively. "We're listening. We want to help." More silence. Then, so faintly they had to lean forward to hear, "Prove it." Sarah and Nielsen exchanged glances. "How?" Sarah asked. The reply came immediately, stronger now. "Make them admit what they did." The airline? The executives? "Yes. We'll need evidence," Nielsen said. "Something definitive that we can take to the authorities." The black box fell silent for so long that Sarah thought the connection had been lost. Then a child's voice, clear and distinct. "Check the weight sensors." "What weight sensors?" Sarah asked, confused. The aircraft sensors were destroyed in the crash. Not the plane, the terminal. Gate 27B. Every passenger that boarded was weighed. They knew. Nielsen frowned. Airport security scanners don't record passenger weight. But Sarah's eyes had widened. Unless... She turned to her computer and began typing rapidly. Logan International installed new security measures last year. Advanced imaging technology. It doesn't just detect weapons or contraband. It creates a complete biometric profile of every passenger, including approximate weight. "And that data is stored where?" Nielsen asked. "On the airport's secure servers," Sarah continued typing. "If we can access those records and compare them with the flight manifest and the aircraft's maximum takeoff weight, we could prove they knowingly overloaded the aircraft," Nielsen finished. "But accessing those servers would require authorization we don't have." The black box emitted a soft static-like sound that might have been laughter. "Check your email," a chorus of young voices whispered. Sarah opened her email client. A new message had arrived seconds earlier from an address consisting only of numbers. 2317 at redacted.gov. The subject line read, "The truth wants to be free." The email contained a single attachment, a compressed file of security scan data from Boston Logan International, Gate 27B, for the morning of October 12th. Complete biometric profiles of every passenger who had boarded Flight 2317. "This isn't possible," Nielsen murmured, staring at the screen. "How did they?" "Does it matter?" Sarah asked. "We have what we need." The analysis took less than an hour. The evidence was irrefutable. The actual combined weight of passengers and luggage had exceeded the aircraft's maximum safe takeoff weight by nearly 2,000 pounds. Worse, the weight distribution had been catastrophically imbalanced, with too many passengers seated in the rear of the aircraft, compromising its stability during climb. The airline had known. Gate agents had input falsified weights into the system. The pilots had expressed concerns about the discrepancies, but had been pressured to proceed with takeoff. "This is criminal negligence," Nielsen said grimly. "Manslaughter, at minimum." Sarah nodded, her face set with determination. "We need to go public immediately, before they can bury this." As if in response, the black box on the table emitted a soft, almost contented sigh. The sound of 43 children finally being heard. The aftermath was swift and severe. Armed with irrefutable evidence, the NTSB presented their findings to federal prosecutors. Within days, warrants were issued for 6 airline executives and 3 members of the airport's ground operations team. The FAA launched an emergency review of weight and balance procedures at all major airlines. The story dominated headlines for weeks. "Children's voices from beyond expose deadly airline fraud," screamed one tabloid. More reputable sources were only slightly more restrained. "Black box revelations lead to criminal charges in Flight 2317 disaster." None of the news reports mentioned ghostly laughter or handprints burned into metal. Those details remained known only to Sarah Harmon and Thomas Nielsen. Until the trial. 3 months after the crash, in a federal courthouse in Boston, the first of the airline executives took the stand. Christopher Walden, vice president of operations, had personally approved the weight calculation procedures that led to the disaster. Under oath, he denied any knowledge of overloading issues on Flight 2317. As his testimony continued, the courtroom lights flickered briefly. The temperature dropped several degrees. Frost formed on the inside of the windows despite the warm spring day outside. In the sudden silence that followed, a sound filled the courtroom. Children laughing. Soft at first, then growing louder, until it was unmistakable. Several jurors gasped. The judge called for order. Walden's face drained of color. "That's not possible," he whispered, echoing the words of Captain Reeves in his final moments. Then came the thumping. Rhythmic, insistent. Like small hands drumming against doors. Against walls. Against the very fabric of reality. Court officers rushed to investigate. Nothing was found. But when proceedings resumed 20 minutes later, something had changed. Christopher Walden requested to revise his testimony. In a broken voice, he admitted everything. The deliberate falsification of passenger weights, the pressure placed on the flight crew, the systematic disregard for safety in pursuit of profit. And most damning of all, this hadn't been an isolated incident. It was standard practice. One by one, the other defendants followed suit. Confession after confession revealed a corporate culture where safety was an inconvenience. Regulations were obstacles to be circumvented, and passengers, especially small ones, were calculated risks rather than human lives. By the time the trial concluded, 8 of the 9 defendants had been sentenced to prison terms ranging from 7 to 25 years. The 9th, a junior member of the ground crew who had tried to raise concerns before takeoff, received probation in exchange for their testimony. In the aftermath, Sarah Harmon was offered a promotion to lead a new division of the NTSB focused on corporate accountability in aviation disasters. She declined. Instead, she requested assignment to cold cases, previous crashes where the causes had never fully explained or where official findings had been called into question. "There are more voices waiting to be heard," she told Nielsen. Her first case was Southern Airways Flight 462, the crash Nielsen had investigated 26 years earlier, the one with 21 child victims whose handprints had appeared on his bedroom wall. The black boxes from that disaster had long since been archived, the data considered conclusive. But when Sarah retrieved them from storage and connected them to power, something unexpected happened. Children's laughter filled the room. Different voices from Flight 2317, but the same eerie, insistent quality. Demanding justice. Demanding to be heard. And as Sarah listened, she understood. This was just the beginning. Across decades of air travel, across hundreds of crashes attributed to mechanical failure or pilot error, there were stories untold. Truths hidden. Voices silenced. But not anymore. The last time anyone saw Sarah Harmon, she was entering a secure storage facility containing black boxes from 87 major air disasters dating back to 1978. She carried with her a portable power unit and a recording device. She never emerged. When authorities entered the facility 24 hours later, they found only her equipment, still running, capturing what appeared to be hours of static. But if you filter that static, enhance the audio, and listen very carefully, you can hear them. Hundreds of children's voices, whispering their truths, waiting for someone brave enough to listen. And sometimes, if you're on an aircraft and feel a sudden, unexplained drop in temperature, if you hear what sounds like laughter just at the edge of perception, remember this: they're watching, they're protecting, they're ensuring that what happened to them never happens again. What would you do if you heard children's laughter coming from a disconnected black box? Do you believe these voices are simply technological glitches or something far more supernatural? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more aviation investigations that the industry doesn't want you to see.